That seems pretty offensive.
Honestly, you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
A basket of deplorables.
You want a big government gun-grabbing liberal? Well, the Democrats are giving you one.
Lion Ted.
Little Marco, crooked Hillary.
Democrats produce mobs. Republicans produce jobs.
Political candidates and the media often turn their backs on civil dialogue for dirty personal attacks that serve more to divide than unite us. This is wrong, and we can do better. That's why we talk to both the Republican Club and Democrat Club here on campus to hear them out, dive into divisive issues, and start a political dialogue that sets a positive example. Both groups were receptive, passionate, and reasonable, willing to communicate across party lines. We brought volunteers from both groups together to talk about the issues they care about.
I'm Jayde Malzone. I'm from Democrats Club.
I'm Quinn Brussel. I too am from Democrats Club.
I'm Morgan Hunting. I'm from the Republican Club.
Benjamin Handy. I'm from the Republican Club.
I'm Ashton Todd. I'm from the Republican Club.
They first discussed health care.
Well, first of all, in Canada, they do have the single-payer system, which is where everybody pays like a small percent of their taxes, and it's the same amount for everybody. And then that leads to everybody having free healthcare and that everyone can afford it. Like a big part of that is like you shouldn't have to go bankrupt and like not have food for your family just because you got the common cold.
And I think a common argument against single payer is that it's going to blow up the premiums, it's going to wreck the economy. But the reason we bring up countries like Canada is just that they've been able to pull this off, and we think we could they could act as a good model for how our healthcare system should work.
Well, the one thing that I kind of disagree with healthcare is like looking at other countries. Like right now, it's pretty low, or like the cost is always growing because it requires taxes, and even in our system where it could be expensive, it's not as expensive as it's going to get in other countries. I've heard of a projection of, like right now they said in Ontario, which is the largest province in Canada, that 20% of their tax revenue, or 20% of their taxes goes to healthcare and providing it. But within, I think it was 2020 or 30, they're projecting that's going to be 80%. So, and looking in other countries, they spend a lot of money on healthcare, providing it for healthcare, and in our country, we do as well, but we do that for the benefit of people. Like just one thing is because government-run things, in my opinion, are usually not always the best run, because they always try to cut corners. That's something the government does. They'll choose how many MIR machines are available. They'll choose what kind of treatments you'll get. Because I believe in the United Kingdom, where it's a very small country, they don't have a lot of resources. They cut down on a lot of things that we get here for granted, like hip surgeries and other pretty basic surgeries that we get all the time. They have to limit how many people get those. Like cataracts, that's a treatment that's not very that's not offered as much in like England, which is another country which provides healthcare, because the government just doesn't want to spend those things because it's too much money just to pay for everyone who can get who
so
has
you're saying like in a single payer system, you might not be able to get as many treatments as you could in America.
Well, yeah,
I think one thing that is, it's single payer, so everyone gets like the health care that they like. If you can't afford like cancer treatments, that you get that. But I don't think that necessarily has to mean that there isn't like this like private as well. They can coexist, and I think kind of the main point of like Obamacare and other things like that is just making sure that the people who really can't afford it can get health care, and I think that should be the focus. Mm-hmm. Is not necessarily making it so like rich guy making $200,000 a year can get his like kind of minor stuff for free. I think it should be more focused on making sure the poor people can get their needs.
That's kind of the thing is, what do you classify as poor and what do you classify as rich? Because to someone who's in the lower middle class, they might say, well, we're making too much money to be able to get the poor benefits, but we're not making enough to be able to just afford healthcare. So that's kind of the problem with Obamacare is they benefit the poor, and I agree with that, but the poor you're making enough money to where you can afford it. like that ratio is just kind of off right now.
Yeah.
Well, because right now we see, even right now, anyone who gets put into the hospital, they have to treat them. No matter who they are, what they did, or even why they're in there, they have to treat them. No matter what, even if they know they can't pay, they have to treat them. And so that's why in the past couple decades, prices for even the most basic things in hospitals, like food and drink, and then even to just basic things that would cost like a couple bucks to make, now costs an exponential amount because they're trying to pay for people who can't already pay. And so that's kind of, and so I would agree with helping people out, but when it costs so much money like healthcare, it just kind of seems quite to be a problem because, where are we going to get that money?
The second topic was global warming.
Well,
we believe that.
Yeah, I believe that
Yeah.
climate change and global warming
It's
does
real.
occur.
It is occurring, but the way that we're trying to stop it right now is going to sustainable resources, wind, water, that kind of thing. I agree with that, but we're trying to shift from oil to renewable resources like instantly.
Yeah.
But we're saying that it's not the best right now because the way you get these renewable things are actually hurting the environment more than if we just use oil.
Yeah.
I think one thing that it's kind of different about global warming than a lot of issues is it's kind of imminent, like life or death. The UN just released a new report basically saying that if we don't like majorly renovate the global economy and where we get our energy, then we're going to be drastically affected within our lifetimes.
Yeah.
And so I think that there does kind of need to be a rush to convert energy and kind of get us on the right track as soon as possible. Like one thing, I think the U.S. needs to be in the Paris Climate Accord. We're not in it because Donald Trump thinks that global warming doesn't exist, so he pulled us out. But like we use up a lot of energy, we create a lot of energy. We need to be in the Paris Climate Accord.
Yeah. Well, sorry. Honestly, like it is difficult. Like I see what you're saying. How like it's a really kind of a huge problem. How we're just switching from oil to renewable resources like so fast. But like like Quinn said, like it's happening. Like it's done. Like climate change is coming, and it's right now. Like 2016 was like one of the warmest years we've ever had, and that was just like a couple of years ago. And like sea levels are rising, and it's life or death, like pretty much.
Yeah. Well,
you can talk about the batteries and all that.
Well, so when we think of renewable energy, what do you think would be the best one we can go for?
Probably like solar panels.
I don't have enough information. To
Well, just
panels.
nuclear solar panel.
I would say nuclear, to me, it's like the dilemma with nuclear is they don't know what to do with the waste.
Actually, just continue.
Yeah.
Well, with in my personal opinion, the way we're going right now, so the Paris Climate Accord involved a lot of just straight up no longer producing things like oil and gas, like with Measure G, but with no way forward. Like like most of Europe, they still use oil and gas, even though most of their economy, even though they said they'll be going to a cleaner economy, and you know where they get that from? Russia. So.
Yeah.
And so when we just say we're going to get rid of oil and gas and not have a plan forward, then that's a problem. And that's kind of what the Paris Climate Accord was doing. It just said we're going to ban this and then not do anything. And I do agree that we do need to go with a cleaner climate. But my dad, he used to sell solar panels for a living, and he would have, but the company kind of fell down a bit. And so I would prefer nuclear, but solar panels. So the one problem with nuclear is that, the nuclear waste. And what's the half-life on that exactly?
I think about 1,000 years.
Yeah, so you have a byproduct of about 1,000 years of half-life. My dad told me, and he's pretty knowledgeable on this because he had to sell them, that solar panels produce a byproduct which has a half-life of infinity, meaning it's never going to go away. And the process to mine the material to produce solar panels is actually worse than it is to mine for coal, because you do the same process, but it's in areas which have more more places which require more mining.
They then discussed Measure G, the oil and gas repeal in our upcoming local elections, and its effects on our community.
So I think I like Measure G, and like they pointed out before, you can't really just shut down everything and convert. And Measure G doesn't do that. They keep open, or they keep the currently existing ones open, but it prompts people or it prompts the community to try to move towards more renewable energy or just better for the environment. I think like in Morro Bay, they have good opportunity for wind turbines. I think that can be thing. Obviously, the problem with that is that people tend not to want wind turbines like in their and on their coastline.
Well, they're not as effective as other means.
No, yeah.
So,
but I like that Measure G doesn't totally shut down. Doesn't shut down the current stuff we have and allows us to kind of think about getting our energy from better, more renewable sources.
Okay, now I agree with saying we should have wind turbines and shift to more renewable resources, but if we start closing down the oil and gas production, then gas prices for cars, manufacturing will actually go up because it's about $4, is that right?
Okay,
$4
well,
now.
I understand that money is a problem and that our gas prices are going to rise, but bringing it back to like global warming, it's happening, you know?
Yeah.
And if my gas prices have to rise in order to like do our community's part to like bring that to a stop, like I'm all for it.
I'll pay like extra money so that like Florida doesn't get erased from the map. Like you've it's not a coincidence that you've had these several just devastating hurricanes in a row just smacking the southeast. That's proven byproduct of global warming. So I think we just kind of need to like get things done and take action.
Well, the thing is that oil and gas, what are we going to replace that with? Because gas,
renewable resources.
Well, no, because I know that, but like what exactly? Because if we replace a car like gasoline powered cars, electric cars, well, the batteries to produce that are very hard to produce because they require a lot of resources that have to be mined, and the way they do that is the same way they always mine coal.
I think that
or actually worse than they do with coal.
Yeah, I think it's clear that we have to, as well as changing the sources of our energy, also change our energy habits. We as a population need to focus on being more sustainable and using up less energy. That's something that we're gonna have to do to make this work.
The last topic was gun reform.
I think. First of all, a big kind of a misconception. The Democrats don't want to steal your guns. Don't want to take your guns. They're like, I know there's a lot of propaganda on that kind of thing, but I think most Democrats are just for making a more harsh vetting process and making it harder to acquire a gun if you should not be owning a gun.
Okay.
Well, sorry, it's pretty fast.
Well, I want to ask your opinion. What do you think of us going like Australia? Like doing the same thing Australia did. They basically asked for a mandatory buyback, which means they banned all guns. You had to turn in all your guns. And so the reason why I'm asking that is because every time a Democrat does this is they go on talk about guns. They say we don't want to ban guns, but then they say let's just do what Australia did.
No, I don't believe that we should take all of your guns and take away all of your gun rights and your amendment, but like there's a problem, and it's like we're not asking to take away your guns, we're asking for background checks. And like during the Florida shooting, like that man, like he had a far history of mental illness, and it's like you should not be able to buy a gun if you have a history of like anger management and like all of these things. Like
I think the reason that people refer to Australia isn't necessarily that they want to enact exactly what they did, but because it's clear that in Australia gun violence went way down, and so that not only has to do with taking guns from civil, like obviously I don't think they're saying that taking the guns from the civilians did any of that. If no one can have guns, then the crazy high school students also can't have guns, so that has to do with that. So I don't think it's, you're saying that we need to take guns from good civilians. And I don't even think civilians who should rightfully own guns need to worry about this, because if you should own a gun, you should also pass the vetting process.
Well, so the thing with Australia is that their gun violence was going down even before, like way before they did the gun ban, and also the after the gun ban, there was a massive black market for firearms in Australia. They actually discovered that, I believe it was only how much was it? Did you say it was a very low number of the guns were actually turned into the government, So there was a massive black market surge. And so on the process, you mentioned high schoolers.
Yeah.
And in the United States and everywhere, you cannot purchase a rifle unless you're 18. So that pretty much is only seniors. And with the kid from Florida, I do believe that he should not have owned firearms. And I've actually looked into it because I did an article on it back in the 7th grade. That kid was reported to the FBI, I believe, 30 times, and the cops actually went to his house several times. And so when it comes to that case, you have a lot of stuff where the actual people who have to deal with this actually have to get involved. And when it comes to background checks, it depends on where you live. Because here in California, we have some of the strictest gun laws in any state. I've actually witnessed my father purchase firearms, and the background checks aren't just you sitting there for 10 days and then they give you the gun. Yeah. They actually go into the FBI database, which if you did anything, if there's any reason why you shouldn't own a gun, it's going to be there.
I'll point out that California also really has not as much of a problem with this as some other states.
That's what I was going to say.
Also, federal, I think, I read an article on this in the New York Times. Federal background checks harsh federal background checks, I believe, reduce mass shooting rates by about 80% over the countries that have done this. And then also, so with countries, there's also a pretty good relationship between the number of guns owned by the population of a country and the number of mass shootings. Like U.S. or per capita, the U.S. has by far the most guns per capita and by far the most mass shootings. So a country second most has second most. This goes all the way through the top 7. And so there's a clear relationship between, and this is deadly firearms like AR-15s.
The thing on per capita, it's kind of, it's like saying the more cars you have in a country, the more car crashes you're going to have. And most countries that I know of that have...
This is homicide rate, though.
Well, homicide rate,
Sorry, mass shooting rate.
Mass shooting rate, yes. Well, what would be the other countries on that list? Like...
I think there's some... Oh, and they factored this for... I'm guessing you're wondering about violence of the country. They factored in... they controlled for violence of the country. They can... they controlled for the homicide rate of the country in order to... erase the possibility of there being just like something like the Middle East.
At the end, we asked both sides to discuss their areas of agreement and misconceptions they feel exist on both sides.
Honestly, I really respect, you guys, I can tell you guys have a deep love for your country and you believe that, your rights are super important, and all of us agree with that, and, you're just trying to stand up for what you believe is right, and that's what we're trying to do too. And I think in a way we're all just doing the same thing for our country and standing up for our freedoms and just doing what's right.
Why don't we go back and forth?
Okay. Well, I see what you guys are saying with moving to renewable resources, and I think we both agree that we need to move to renewable resources. Just you guys a little quicker than us. But I think we both agree on that global warming is happening and we need to fix that.
I like the Republican kind of feeling of independence, and I feel like most Republicans are really feel that we as a people should be able to regulate should be able to do what we want and have liberty in this country, and I respect that.
Yeah, and I can respect the passion you guys have for it, because a lot of the stuff you do, not a lot of people want to talk about it or just something like that, and so the passion you put into it is good. And when you get to people like you guys, I understand, you are the people I would like to talk to, and you guys have the passion, but you don't go too far, and I can respect that out of you guys. So.
Mine would have to be global warming. I do see it as an actual threat. That's all I have for it. I'm sorry. I just sat here the entire time.
The flip side of that is what misconceptions do you think the other side has about you?
I think that we are gun-ho crazy. That we're not saying everyone should have guns, gun for you, gun for you. We're saying that the way you guys are attacking us, saying that our gun laws aren't strict. They are in some places, and so
Yeah.
that's kind of the misconception that people have.
And adding to that, I believe like we pretty much have the same almost misconceptions in the same area. Like we don't want to take all your guns, and I don't agree with what Australia did. I think that's overstepping it a little bit.
Well, I think that the one big misconception is everyone takes the most outrageous version of that party, such as, you know, let's say like us just being everyone needs guns, or we don't believe in or in climate change, and with you guys it's like, you know, we want to take away your rights and this, that, and the other thing. And I believe that people just take that misconception and put that as the main group. And I do not disagree. And I do think that there are groups in each side, like the alt-right and the alt-left, who are like overly like as that party and do things that I would not agree with on both sides. But I think that just people project that as every person in that group, every person who's ever associated with that group. So, and I think that's just one of the biggest misconceptions.
Yeah, I think kind of one of the problems with the Democratic Party that's really hurt the relationship of like your normal Democrat is kind of the PC left. People, like a lot of people hate the PC left, like people, because I would agree that there is definitely like some of these cultural appropriation things, people go way too far and kind of make a big deal out of something that I don't think anyone would ever reasonably be offended by, and I think that's kind of hurt the Democrats' reputation as being reasonable.
Yeah. Well, like the thing in my case, well, like, you know, I do not believe that the PC left, as the mega feminists who go out and yell at people just for, you know, just a simple comment or just something like that. I do not believe that they are the major majority, but they are the ones who do the most.
They make the most noise.
But they make the most noise, and so they get the most attention, and so I do think that that's probably one of the biggest issues with with kind of the left, is that, you know, the people who are reasonable, like you, just don't make enough of a
You don't make a noise, you know,
don't make enough
yourself.
Noise as much as the.
I think people interpret the Democrats' message as more of kind of a like extreme, like too progressive. Like a lot of people just aren't quite ready for, too much like just totally changing their way of life too quickly. And I think that kind of the overall Democrat message gets swept up in kind of the extremists.
Yeah.
In our world today, we are more divided than ever. But it doesn't have to be that way. By straying from personal attacks and sticking to the issues, we can lessen the political divide and start getting things done.